Hello and welcome to another edition of Rob's 3 R's. Hi there, Rob. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
So, what's on the menu for today?
Well, today, change of pace. It's entitled Pietermaritzburg's raison d'etre, which is a French expression.
Mm.
So I want to elaborate, why was Pietermaritzburg established? What is its reason for existence? And in telling that story through time, I think it points to a lot of missed opportunities for our city, and then hopefully end on a positive note to saying these are things which I think we can do to capitalize on some of the historic advantages that we have.
Great. Sounds interesting. So, let's get to it.
Right, let's start at the beginning. Most people are aware that Pietermaritzburg was established by the Voortrekkers. It's a Voortrekker dorp, had all those characteristics. What is not well understood, that it was established as what the Voortrekkers called their Hoofdstad, their main town. They didn't have a word for capital, but it was a capital. And an important place. Remember, the trekkers had left the Cape Colony, the British colony, which extended from Cape Town all the way up to the Orange River.
Yes.
So once the Voortrekkers crossed the Orange River, hallelujah, they were free. And they decided then that everything north of the Orange River, the British could have everything south of the Orange River. They wanted control, by whatever means were necessary, of everything north of the Orange. So Pietermaritzburg then wasn't just a local small place. It was meant to be the capital of Natalia, which extended north of the Orange River. So it's KZN, what later became the Orange Free State, and the Transvaal.
So, massive area here.
So in fact, as far as the Voortrekkers were concerned, if they had managed to control all of those areas, Pietermaritzburg would have been the capital, which might have changed the whole course of history.
Absolutely.
Because we'll come to it later when we came to the Union of South Africa, when 4 provinces had to amalgamate, then there was a discussion about where it should be. So the Voortrekkers had lofty ideas. They laid out an extensive capital here, something that people would be impressed by, not think, okay, this is just some small place in a dusty valley. They were speaking Dutch, Hollands, Netherlands, which was slowly becoming Afrikaans. The exact date, late 1838, is when the place was named. How much of it had been laid out by then, one doesn't know. But by February of 1839, the Volksraad issued the first town planning regulations. Maritzburg often thinks that town planning schemes are new. They're not. The Voortrekkers laid it out, and Article 5 of those regulations is what I'm holding up here. It's an interesting language. De woonhuizen zullen na aanwysing van een daartoe gekwalifiseerde persoon in den front moeten gebouwd word en in een gelijke linie. What it says is that all residential buildings, houses, have to be built in a straight line, and that line will be pointed out to you by a qualified person. So, if you want to know which of the oldest houses, are there Voortrekker houses in Maritzburg, they will be right at street's edge.
Yes.
If they are back from the pavement, from the curb, no. So literally on a Voortrekker house, if you open the door, you're virtually stepping into the street.
Do we have any of those houses still in existence?
Yes, that's a subject for another day. But this 1839 regulation, so you don't have to argue about anything else. Where is the building? If it's at street's edge, then
That's
it's
a
built in
Voortrekker.
terms of these regulations. If it's set back from the street, which is what the English preferred, to have a garden in front and so on, then it's clearly much later. So that one little phrase opens up a whole history and so on. which is very important. Now, the fact that it was an important place did not go unnoticed. One of the early British travelers to this town gave a comment. He said, we could see at once that this was a substantial place and that the people were no mean prentices of their craft. So that's interesting. You've got Dutch descendants laying out a very grid-like pattern and so on.
Which is still evident.
Right. And very importantly, that it had to be irrigable.
Okay.
Okay. Now, again, without overemphasizing it, the Dutch could read the lay of the land.
For sure.
That's their background. There'd be no Holland if they didn't know how to build canals and ditches.
Absolutely.
So they built a canal in Pietermaritzburg from more or less where the Botanic Gardens are now up to the station end of the town. And they laid out this grid. There's Pietermaritzburg's grid. People ask me, oh, there's nothing left of the Voortrekker, and I say, that grid is an indelible imprint. If you fly over Pietermaritzburg, it's remarkable, and so on. It's a dramatic grid. The ground slopes gradually. At the station or top end of the map, we're about 2,200 meters. And it goes down to almost 2,100. So water could be led to the top end of Church Street in the furrow, and it would run down each of the long streets. And at certain times, on certain days, each property owner could lower a gate which would direct the water onto his property. Which I'll suggest that's no mean achievement. Look at this view. This is probably 1841, top end of Church Street. It shows the property was owned by Mr. Versaghi, and he had a watermill. In other words, the canal from the Dorpsspruit, the current was strong enough to turn a top watermill for him for grinding purposes and so on. So it was a genuine Dutch layout in that sense. It also they kept the central block open, right? Which then became both a church and a market square, rolled into one. Later on, I'll talk about the Church of the Vow. That's a hotly disputed development in the city's history. This is a view of the lower part of what became the church market square.
Is this our current day market square?
Correct.
What has evolved into the current day market
Correct.
square? Okay.
I'll point to a small building here. This building there in the background.
Yeah.
That, in my view, is the building which was subsequently enlarged and dressed up to make it look like a Cape Dutch Voortrekker church.
Yes.
Which it was never.
Okay.
So I don't want to go into that now, but the Church of the Vow is largely a myth.
Okay.
For all sorts of reasons. Because a church is not built on the edge of the street, it's built in the middle of the square for the wagons and so on, everything else, which you can see here. That little building was the minister's house, the parsonage, and it was built in accordance with Article 5 right at the edge of the street.
Yeah, you can see that evidently, even the houses there.
I'll come lately. Maritzburg College believes they played their first rugby game on the square in this area. I don't. There's not a blade of grass there. It's used for wagons and everything else.
It's not big enough.
When I get the time, I will go through the witness reportings of what happened that particular day. And I will not be popular amongst the college old boys group, but I think there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered about that. Right, so the Voortrekker period then, however, was short-lived. The British thought, hang on, something might happen here, and in 1843 they sent a small armored army up from Port Natal, which became Durban. And so the Voortrekker hegemony was very short-lived, 4, maybe 5 years. Many of the settlers then decided to leave. The Voortrekkers wanted nothing to do with the British colonial rule. Retief's manifesto makes it abundantly clear that they wanted slavery to continue, for instance. So there's been lots written about South African history about, well, there's a fight for land and all of that's true. But at the end of the day, the Voortrekkers wanted the freedom to live as they thought right, their interpretation of the Bible or whatever else. So one needs to be very, very clear about that. One last point that I said you can tell Voortrekker houses. Just the top one here shows houses in Maritzburg, a row of 3 Voortrekker houses. These are houses which were whitewashed. They're built in mud, okay, whitewashed walls. And then you'll see on them that have a narrow stoop and then a semicircular wall at the end of each stoop. If you go around Maritzburg, I'm telling you now, wherever you see a stoop like that, it's a telltale sign.
Of the Voortrekker.
Of a Voortrekker stoop, for instance. And so on. And one could extrapolate that further because the older guys would love to sit on the stoop and smoke their pipe,
of course,
and talk to anybody who's walking past. And that's why it was called Loop Street.
Because you'd walk past.
Because you could walk and talk to people.
Yeah.
The other street at the other end, the back end of those properties had no houses. Okay. So that would be Boomstraat. You can walk down it, but you'll be talking to trees only, not people.
Okay.
So the original street names were important. Alan Paton, in his autobiography, read some of my stuff, and he thanked me, but he said he had no idea as a young boy that it wasn't Loop Street and Boom that they were offering. I had no idea that, in fact, Pietermaritzburg had Voortrekker origins.
Oh, really?
So the English took over the place and changed it very completely.
So much so that Pietermaritzburg is still known as the last outpost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Victorian buildings, last outpost, all of those things, which are accurate, but it's a layer on top. So Maritzburg, you can see it as a palimpsest. There are various layers. There's a Voortrekker layer, there's a British layer, there's a later group areas layer, and now we're in the throes of a new South African layer. So it's like a cake.
Absolutely.
Now, so I guess that's what I'm saying. How do we ice this cake and so on? All right. The city grew because in 1856 it was declared to be not the Voortrekker capital, but the capital of the British colony of Natal. Now that ushered all sorts of things, because the Victorian capital has to have a statue of Queen Victoria, obviously. And you'll notice on that statue on Long Market Street, it says Victoria, Queen and Empress.
Yes.
So they emphasize in that.
The Empress.
So again, Maritzburg was a place with some wide pretensions. So it got a wonderful post office building. It got the Supreme Court. It got the parliamentary complex, a lower house and an upper house of parliament, which are wonderful historic pieces, but they are not readily usable by a modern parliamentary situation. So there are many relic features. The map I'm holding up is a 1906 by an Italian cartographer, Seccadinari, his surname. He did Maritzburg and he did Durban. This shows every building in the central area of Maritzburg. Wherever you are, you could enlarge it and you can see, it shows even the post boxes. It shows the
Very interesting.
Alexander Park. It showed the way we had a cemetery. I'll talk about that in a later one, that the cemetery was divided into the various religious sects. So if you were Anglican, you got married, Anglican, Methodist, and so on.
So you're talking about the cemetery now that runs
The commercial road, the main one, yeah.
Albert Lutuli,
Yeah.
Chief Albert Lutuli. Yeah.
So it was a cemetery divided according to whichever religious sect
Yes.
you belonged to. And it was essentially not just a white cemetery, white Christian cemetery.
Okay.
There is, however, one Indian woman who is buried there,
Okay.
but she had converted to become a Christian.
Very
But
interesting.
that's a subject for another story. I think to me that old cemetery is ready to be utilized for other purposes now. It's controversial,
Yes,
but
absolutely.
it's way beyond 100 years old. And frankly, I don't think anybody visits it anymore. And it's almost impossible, and it's very expensive to upkeep it. I'm not even sure that the city should upkeep it because the properties were owned
Yeah.
by that.
So I just want to ask our viewers at this point: do you visit the cemetery that Rob is talking about? Do you know of people or do you have family members or ancestors that are buried there? Please get in contact with us. We'd be most interested to know about that.
One other interesting point. I said it was a white Christian cemetery. One section was reserved for pets. So your favorite cat or dog can be buried in one section.
Okay.
Remember, this is 1906. So,
Yes, yeah. I didn't realize
please
such...
don't ask me where black or Indian people were buried.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that because that's another very interesting episode in the city's history. Yeah. So I suppose what I'm saying, having researched and written a lot about it over 50 years, there's still a lot that hasn't been.
Yes.
It hasn't been fully researched and so on. And
lots of untold stories.
Still. Lots of stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
For instance, one of Maritzburg College's most well-known headmasters, R.D. Clark, is buried there.
At the...
in the old cemetery.
Cemetery, okay.
But it's very run down. I'm sure the college old boys would rather have that tombstone somewhere on the campus.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's unfair. I'm not saying let's obliterate the memory of those people. I think we can do them better justice by having a proper plaque or tombstone where it's safe. It's not vandalized and so on.
Absolutely. I mean, the States recently, much has been written about the condition of that cemetery. I mean, the vandalism is horrific. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I think it's always fallen between who actually is responsible for it.
Yes.
All I'm saying is historically it was the individual churches.
Okay. But many of them do not exist any longer.
I think all of them still do. They may not be as strong or as popular as they were. Yeah. But yeah.
I mean, because, as you would say, that's a story for another day. I mean, the proliferation of churches in the city center and, they've now abandoned some of them. They're not used. They've been sold on for other purposes.
Yeah, but they're all using mountain rise or crematoriums.
Yes, yeah.
So that's another issue. I think as a city we need to look at what are we doing?
Yes.
What are we doing about
honoring our dead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying trash it.
Yeah.
But let's take an informed view of it. And that cemetery is prime inner city residential. Very close to the park.
Yes.
Very walking distance to the CBD. And of course, the great weakness of apartheid planning was that we made very little, if no, accommodation facilities for other than white people in the CBDs.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we're complaining that the CBDs are overrun. Buildings have been occupied and so on. I'm not saying this is the panacea, but all post-apartheid cities have a very urgent need to provide better, affordable inner city housing.
Yes.
And I'm suggesting let's look at that cemetery as a potential site. Be controversial. So I'm not saying we just do it without any consultation, but let's look at it realistically and so on. But that's a subject
For another day.
another day.
Yes.
Right. I want to turn now that Maritzburg is a British colonial capital, its future should have been assured.
Yes.
Okay?
Entrenched, stamped.
You can go anywhere in the world. Go to a British colonial capital, you'll see that Queen Victoria statue in Adelaide, in Canada, wherever. And those cities are capitals. We must also remember cities like Brazil and Australia. They had fights. In Australia, it was Sydney and Melbourne fighting like mad. So in the end, the Australian government, when they formed their federation, said, right, let's build Canberra.
Yeah.
Boom. Brazil did the same. Rio and Sao Paulo were arguing repeatedly, so they built Brasilia.
Yeah.
So we pause on that note that being a capital is critically important. It's your ticket to ride. As long as you're the capital and you perform the functions that a capital should do, your future is almost assured. You should have survived as a capital, and you should have been a big hustling city.
Yes.
Which Maritzburg clearly is not.
It's not, yeah, definitely. So how did we go from being?
That's the second half of this talk. We'll get to that now.
Yeah. So how did we go from being this capital to the poor sister of the metro?